Our first ever double calling just wrapped up in Memphis, and one hero was the talk of the town. Yes, the Hunted released this weekend, and Cindra, Drakai of Retribution, was the star of the show on release weekend. She picked up 1 win and 1 second place, 1 finalist finish. So let's talk about how Redline Cindra functions, just in case you want to pick up the deck for your upcoming RTN season. Starting with Brody Spurlock's first place calling win. He picked up the win at the Calling Memphis this past weekend that wrapped up on Saturday, and he did so on Cindra. This is a Redline version of Cindra that I was told when I talked to him after the win, I was told that was originally created by Yuki Lee Bender. So if you want a deep dive into the deck list from Yuki herself, I will point you to her Patreon and to her YouTube channel. I believe she's going to upload some stuff about that. Not sure when that's going to happen, but keep your eyes peeled down there. Links in the description. As for right now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the list and what you can sort of infer and understand from watching it played and from playing it yourself. I've been playing Redline for about a week now. My list was not nearly as refined as this one, but it gives me some basis to talk to you about it. So Cindra, Drakai of Retribution, 4 intellect, 40 health, Royal Draconic Ninja hero. She has this text that says whenever you hit a marked hero, create a fealty token, but the most important part about her effect is that once per turn instant, pay 3 effect. Because if you pay 3, you can equip up to 2 Draconic daggers from your graveyard. And this will cost 1 less for each Draconic chain link you control, meaning that after 3 Draconic chain links, this effect is free. That's important to note because we're going to be flicking the daggers a lot via Flick Knives. Flick Knives is one of the 2 pieces of equipment that makes this deck function, and the reason the deck is so good. Flick Knives allows you to throw one of your daggers, have it deal 1 damage. If it does, it's counted as hit, and then you destroy the dagger. That's important. It counts as a hit. Blood Splattered Vest allows you to get a resource with impunity. You can flick a dagger, have it hit, activate Blood Splattered Vest to gain a resource. That is important to note. You can do that 3 times. On the 3rd time, Blood Splattered Vest explodes. Dragon Scaler Flight Path is essentially the same as Snapdragon Scalers in this list, with one distinction. It does block for 1 as Battle Worn, and you do have to use it with a bunch of Draconic chain links, so that is sometimes important. There's 2 pieces of Arcane Barrier. Well, there's 1 piece of Arcane Barrier, and there's 1 prevention on Spell Fray Leggings, but you're really not teched to beat big Arcane heroes. Nevertheless, Brody didn't let that stop him. He did it twice. And this is the piece of equipment that makes the deck function. Cindra, because of Mask of Momentum, is a 5-card hand hero. She has 5 intellect. It's just that her 5th intellect is living on the board. Because once per turn effect, when an attack action card, that's important, an attack action card you control, is the 3rd or higher chain link to hit in a row, you draw that card. So this is living on the board. Now, this has of course been a piece of equipment since WTR when the game first came out, but why is it so important now? Well, because of the interaction we just described with Flick Knives. Let's say you play a 0 for 3 and a 0 for 3, or an opponent says, I don't care about either of those. And then you play a 0 for 4, and then they say, whoa, okay, I don't want them to draw a card. I'm going to interact with them. So they block it. You can flick the knife in an attack reaction state. It will count as a hit. It will not draw you a card, but it will maintain the hit streak of 3. Then you can send another 0 for 4, and then they have to again decide, am I going to interact with them via blocks, or am I going to let them have the 5th card? That is why Cindra is a 5-card hand hero, and that's what the deck list is built around. It's built around going incredibly wide, incredibly cheaply. As you can see at the top here, there are 67 reds in the list. This is not separated by main and sideboard. I'm not going to presume too terribly much. There are only 5 yellow and blue cards in total, which means this is as red as you can possibly imagine, which is why when I built this deck about a week ago, I called it Red Cindra in my in my February deck lists. Okay, so breaking down the deck. To understand how this deck functions, you have to understand the different pieces of the puzzle. Piece number 1, you need chain starters. These are cards that allow you to start the turn either with a red card or with a Draconic chain link. Ignite is one of those chain starters. Let's see, let's pick them out. Oath of Loyalty is another chain starter. Ravenous Rabble, Rising Resentment. These are all cards that cost you nothing and are either just red cards to attack with or draconic cards to attack with. And of course, these are very important. Brand with Cinder Claws. There are 5 Brand with Cinder Claws, and making something draconic will come into play as we see here. Now, after you started the turn with a chain starter, you can follow it up with more damage, like Lava Vein Loyalty, which is looking for draconic chain links, Burning Blade Dance, which is looking for draconic chain links and can flick a dagger if you hit. Demonstrate Devotion, which is a 1-for-4, so it's a breakpoint. We're pushing a breakpoint here, and it's looking for a draconic chain link, and it gets you a fealty token. That's important to note. Same thing with Display Loyalty, a 0-for-3 that gets you a fealty token. I forgot to mention Fire Tenet Strike First. This is a chain starter as well. Hot on Their Heels is a way to get marking going, but is looking for a chain starter so that you can keep the ball rolling. Of course, Blaze Headlong, one of the best draconic cards in the game, is looking for a red card. There's a lot of red cards in the deck, so you're going to see a few of those. You can kind of count Wrath of Retribution as an extender. It's more of like a combo piece, but that's the extent of those sort of chain extender cards. Then you have a couple of little gadget cards. Well, we'll talk about the gadget cards here in a bit. You have Chain Enders. We'll go to that next. Breaking Point is a chain ender that allows you to blow up the arsenal if you've reached that 4 chain link point. And again, remember, it costs 1, but we can generate 1 resource with pretty much impunity by flicking a dagger, and we're going to be doing that as well. Blood Runs Deep is also one of those kind of like extender pieces, but also flicks your daggers as well. So this is one of those kind of special case scenario cards that lets you both maintain a hit state and present like a weird, I don't really want to block this type number. Other chain enders include Lava Burst, which is a fantastic card in this deck. It's just a free 0-for-5. And same thing with Art of the Dragon Fire is a free 1-for-7 in some cases, because you're going to try and make this draconic off of the fealties you generate from Display Loyalty, Demonstrate Devotion, and possibly from hitting after marking with Hot on Their Heels. Dragon Power is a chain ender as well, because it is also a 1-for-7 if you do make it draconic. And like I said, there are some gadget cards we're going to talk about, like Art of the Dragon Blood. Making some of these cards draconic, Art of the Dragon Fire, Art of the Dragon Blood, means that you can do some really powerful things. This can discount, like Demonstrate Devotion. It can discount the other chain ender we didn't talk about, the Hunter, which is fantastic if you could pull it off. But it really just allows you to go a little bit further. And it's also a 0-for-4 if you make it draconic. So the deck is really designed for a bunch of 0-for-3s, a bunch of 0-for-4s, and a chain ender to put together 5-card hands or even more if you arsenal. As far as pitch cards, the only blues in the deck are Warmonger's Diplomacy, which is a fantastic blue to splash in if you are going up against a meta that has a lot of Viscerai, and that's exactly what there was this past weekend. And a couple of other little cards in here. You've got 3 Loyalty Beyond the Graves, so D-React. You've got 3 Shelter from the Storms, the best D-React in the game, and 3 Wax-Ons. Again, another fantastic card in a meta full of low-to-the-ground aggressive decks. This is a great addition as well. This is what the deck looks like. I forgot to mention Ancestral Empowerment. It's actually my favorite card in the deck, which is weird because it basically just draws you a card and pushes a breakpoint as well. It does double duty for you. Only 2 in Brody's version of the list. And this is the list that Brody took to the win at the calling. But it wasn't the only list seeing success, because today is, in fact, the day I'm recording this. On Sunday, Jacob Ball finished as a finalist in the Battle Hardened, taking a similar Redline Cindra list. Let's take a look and compare. This was a narrow defeat to a Prism, a hero I mentioned in my tier list as one of those possible up-and-coming heroes that you should definitely keep your eye on. Turned out that was the case. In an aggressive meta, throwing 7 into 7 into 7 is pretty good. 7 into 7 into 4, right? Not too bad. So comparing here, a lot of the same pieces and the same design philosophy. We've got a lot of chain starters. In this case, we have 6 Brand with Cinder Claws. Fire Tenet, Strike First, Ravenous Rabble, Oath of Loyalty, Rising Resentment, Ronin Renegade. We have a lot of these extender pieces, Burning Blade Dance, Ignite, well, that's a chain starter, but Ignite, is in there as well. Demonstrate Devotion, Display Loyalty, Hot on Their Heels. A very similar build, Blaze Headlong. This version includes more of these Art of the Dragon cards. Now, these are 3 blocks. They are chain enders, and they can do some really crazy things. Like, for example, this also blows up the arsenal. So alongside of Breaking Point, there are 4 copies of Arsenal Disruption, which I love. I included multiple copies of both of these in my version of the list. Art of the Dragon Fire, a 1 for 7 again. And then this one's super spicy. Art of the Dragon Scale is so good in this meta. Why? Because Flick Knives exists, everyone, and Flick Knives is good. So what can you do? You can say, if you don't block this Art of the Dragon Scale, your Flick Knives is dead. It's gone, because I'm going to put a -1 counter on it, and then it's going to be destroyed. This card is so underratedly good right now. It's not just good for Flick Knives, it's good for any equipment that has 1 block on it. You can just remove it from the board. That's incredible. A lot of the same pieces as far as defense reactions. We got Shelter from the Storms, Loyalty Beyond the Grave, I should say. Wrath is in there. This one has 3 extra blues in the form of Throw Daggers, which I was actually playing Throw Dagger instead of Warmongers, and this was in the sideboard. I like it in the main board, and I kind of like the idea of 6, because sometimes you do get a little bit uncomfortable with some of these 1 for 4s that you can't quite easily pay for, and pitching a red to pay for another red does not feel good. Other things about this list, Snatch. And this is one of those really interesting pieces, because Snatch can do some serious work in a deck that runs like Go Again on the board. This has Snapdragon Scalers. Throwing in a couple Snatch on top of like all of these breakpoints makes it even more uncomfortable for the opponent to try and stop. And if you're curious about how these decks stack up against each other, which cards are essentially like the core of this archetype, here we go. I've got Brody's list right here. I've got Jacob's list right here. They differ on what foot to use, like what leg equipment. I would lean towards Snapdragon Scalers if you plan on playing Snatches. I did have 2 Snatches in my main board. I went down from 3 to 2. So if you're looking to play Snatch, you would probably want to include that. If you wanted to play E-Strike, which I have seen some people do, but doesn't make as much sense in this type of list, you could also play the Snapdragon Scalers. Now, Ancestral Empowerment, I'm a big fan of this card. I think it's fantastic. Sometimes you can draw it and not have a great target for it, but more often than not, it's just like an all-rounder. So I'm a big fan of 3 of. Brody is on 2 of. Art of the Dragon Claw made its way into Jacob's list. Scale made its way into Jacob's list as well. Blood Runs Deep is in Brody's version of the list, and this does have a lot of utility because it does allow you to go like 4 and 5 chain links wide and still threaten the card draw. So I do like this card a lot. It is one that I was like, in this version of the list, it's really not as important or as impactful as other cards. So I was actually thinking about the idea of cutting it, and that's what Jacob did, and Brody was on 2. So seeing this makes me go, okay, maybe there is a world that we live in where Blood Runs Deep is actually not super duper necessary. And that could be good if you don't have a copy of that card. Dragon Power seems like a really solid one of that you would play like as another chain ender. Hunt the Hunter as well doesn't really, it seems like a little bit of a gadget card. One card I didn't talk about at all is Drop of Dragon Blood. At first it seems fantastic, but the more I've played it, the more it feels a little uncomfortable sometimes, especially as a non-block card. But drawing an extra card and gaining a resource can do so much work, so it's probably going to remain in that board. The only other differences are Lava Vein Loyalty, which is technically an extender, but it also blocks 3, because this can't start your turn. It has to follow a Draconic Chain Link, but it does block for 3, and it can continue your turn and just create more chain links. In place of that are the 2 Snatches. And then, of course, there's one more brand, and then the blues here in place of 3 Wax Ons. So those are the main differences to these 2 lists. And if you're looking to pick up, this brand new archetype with a hero that's really making a splash and setting the meta ablaze, this is a great place to start. Is Ninja going to remain dominant in the meta, going from Zen now to Cindra? Let me know in a comment below how you feel about the new Drakai of Retribution. Are you excited for this meta, this RTN that we're about to get to, this RTN season? I want to know. And of course, make the number go to the other number and support the channel. I just released a very miniature Fang guide for a single dollar. So for a dollar a day, you can support the pirates here at the Armada. But as always, thanks for watching.